Hello, everybody. J Heat 414 coming back at you with another video. Don't forget to catch me on Twitter as well at the Vault JMU 414. If you got any comments, feel free to leave them. Criticism and all, welcome it all. Hopefully, y'all are enjoying yourself. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, and be safe during this pandemic situation. That being said, topic of the day is going to be the two best talents, in my opinion, that's ever stepped on the basketball floor, and the two best players of this current generation in basketball, LeBron James, Kevin Durant. Both freaks of nature, and both incredibly great basketball players who get a bad rap a lot of times during this generation because of what we perceive as the right route or the right way you're supposed to go about generating your success in the NBA. Starting with LeBron James, I was a huge critic of his starting out. He had to really earn my respect, and he did. Didn't like the fact of, him being the next Michael Jordan and all that stuff they were comparing him to. I came up in an era where it was blasphemous if you talked about anybody being Michael Jordan. We just got tired of hearing that there was another Michael Jordan from, Harold Miner and Jerry Stackhouse, Vince Carter. Kobe was very close. I used to call him Not Quite Mike. He was one of the greatest talents I've ever seen. But in my opinion, Mike did things just better than he did. Kobe had a point guard's handle, could dribble that thing like it was a yo-yo, had it on a string. That Mike could not do. But outside of that, I thought Mike was a little more explosive, a little quicker, a little faster, baseline to baseline. Thought he, had more hops, thought he was stronger, and thought he had more of a killer instinct, more clutch. And the list goes on. That being said, Kobe did all the things that Mike did. Again, I'm just saying Mike did them better, so I would edge him out. But that was at least respectable because Kobe was so close in all those aspects and did so much things like Mike. But most guys fell egregiously short of the Michael Jordan comparison. So here comes the new guy, LeBron James. He's supposed to be the number one pick. If he was to enter the draft at 16, they were saying. They had his high school games being played on national television, and they were taking the place of previously scheduled NBA games, for those who don't remember. That really bothered me. I thought, here they come, overhyping this dude. And the fact that he was 6'7", 240 at the time when they were talking about him in his, sophomore to junior year, I'm thinking, well, he better be killing if he's 6'7", 240 in high school and, is an athlete, can jump out the gym, plays football and all that type of stuff. And when I saw him play in high school, wasn't extremely impressed because, again, with all his physical attributes, I thought he'd be killing more considering some of the guys in the past in high school and what they've done with less physical gifts. But what I didn't notice was his IQ. I didn't notice how he was pacing the game, how he understood the game so early. And it hit me when he hit the league and he was averaging 25 and 5. For those who don't know, averaging 20 in the league is a big deal. It's not just about how many points you put up in general to understand what 20 points mean. Some people will look at the field goal attempts, how many times you shoot, things like that. From talking with pros and Division I guys, other college guys, people who can play, they'll tell you, and from my own experience, competing against guys who are like a Division I level or pro level, getting your shot off, especially I can only imagine on the NBA level, is a legit hard thing to do. So if a guy can not only find his own shot and get his own shot, but do so in the interest of getting 20 buckets a game, they got a spot in the league. Even if their defense is subpar, 20 points a night will do it. You don't even have to be a great rebounder. If they know you can get 20 a night, you're legit. So LeBron was doing that as 18-year-old, coming in and doing it in the flow of the game. Wasn't really jacking up a lot or, out of control. I mean, just feeling the game out, getting 5 rebounds and 5 assists, dictating the flow early. So he started to gain my respect early. I know I used to get on some of my old roommates because when we played NBA Live 2003, we had LeBron James ratings ranked a lot higher than I thought he deserved at the time. Again, I was a critic, didn't really think he deserved all the hype. But now I look back and I think maybe we underrated those bad boys. Who knows? But I will say LeBron James is a historian of the game. And also, these guys, when you're on the level of a LeBron James or a Kevin Durant, you're held up to certain expectations. Now, in the history of the league, most teams, when they win championships, especially if they become dynasties, they're built around multiple all-stars. Keep that in mind. Multiple. Larry Bird, he won a championship early on in his career, but he had a guy in Dennis Johnson who had played at championship level before Larry Bird even came into the league. He also had Kevin McHale, who at certain points in time, people considered him the greatest power forward on the planet and an all-star, and another all-star in Robert Parrish. Magic Johnson, who famously won his first year coming in, had the best player in the league, and nobody was arguing about that at the time, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on his team, and shortly thereafter added Big Game James. He had a nice team and had some other guys on the team that you might want to look up that, had been all-stars before in the past. So guys have talent. We watching the Last Dance special start to appreciate Scottie a little more and Dennis Rodman a little more and Coach Phil. But I'll get away from there and stay focused on LeBron James. LeBron James, looking at the fact that I'm sure he was facing the pressure of the fact that all those guys won early who was his idols that he was looking at, even Kobe and Shaq, even Duncan, but all these guys came in with multiple All-Stars, praise to their GM. But LeBron James was in a situation where his GM wasn't really getting the job done, even though LeBron James was killing in year 4. Year 4, keep in mind, Jordan didn't win his first title until year 7. In year 4, LeBron James ended up getting a team to the finals with Boobie Gibson. Go look him up. I believe Anderson Varejao may have been on that team. Not a great cast of guys. LeBron James carried them there, put in so much work to get past a championship-level Detroit Pistons team that he just looked like he didn't have it in him for San Antonio. And part of that was San Antonio was a great team and slowed him up too. A team that had already won 3 titles in their time and had future Hall of Famers on the squad as well, because that's the pattern. LeBron James sat there and continued to get better in 2008. Go look at his stats. In my opinion, that's around the time he took over as the best player in the league, even though they were giving Kobe a Lifetime Achievement Award at the time and gave him the MVP because his team had one of the best records, if not the best record in the league. But his numbers weren't like as good as they had been when he probably should have got the MVP around 2005 or 6. But LeBron James went on from putting up MVP type numbers to being MVP in 2009 and 10 and leading a team that was being glorified as a good team with a guy in the name of Mo Williams as their next best player and an old rundown Shaquille O'Neal at one point. They were the number 1 seed in the East on the back of LeBron James putting in work. Now, the GM, his job is to get talent around a player like that to be able to help him. But the player's job is to win amongst all else, to sit there, sit it out, no matter what your GM does and get it done. And then we all respect you for putting in the time and work. And if you don't win, we say, well, you were one of the greatest players we've ever seen to never win a title. And those guys that won titles are better than you typically, So LeBron James was facing some major decisions as he went through his early stint in Cleveland, where he had gotten to the finals in year 4, which was ahead of pace for even a Michael Jordan. But when it got to year 7, which was the magical year of 2010, when Mike won his title, LeBron James still didn't have no title. And while his team had some moments where, he could have played better in the Eastern Conference Finals, they weren't ready for the Los Angeles Lakers or the Boston Celtics with the big three at a time, no matter what LeBron would have did out there, because he didn't have a talent around him if you really want to go back and look at it and think about it objectively. Um, but LeBron was the man, probably the best player in the league in 2009 and 2010. But that doesn't matter. At that point, all he was on pace to be Karl Malone or Charles Barkley. He wanted to be Michael Jordan. Now, he knew people were going to sit there and say, if you go and you play with other players, that's not how it's been done in the past. But you know what? And people weren't always coming out of high school in the past either. People weren't doing a lot of things. LeBron James decided to be a trailblazer, as we've seen him be on and off the court. He don't care about what people think. He does what he thinks is going to suit him best and whatever interests him most, and whatever his heart is, he'll do it. And then he'll take the backlash after that. And a lot of times he gets credit for it. So after 2010, if you go back even before you get to that summer, D Wade was interviewed during the All-Star game asking how he was going to feel about LeBron James possibly leaving the league, because that was the rumor. Not the league, but leaving the conference, because maybe he would go somewhere else to play in the West. People knew he didn't have help in Cleveland, wasn't getting help. People didn't want to go to Cleveland. No disrespect to my family out there. It's not a glamorous place if you got a lot of cash and you want to have a good time. There's other cities that you could do more in. So it was hard for LeBron. He tried to get guys to come play with him out there. The GM tried to an extent as well. But for whatever reason, nobody wanted to come play in Cleveland. But LeBron James still wanted to be, or at least have an opportunity to see if he could be what Magic, Bird, and Mike was and win. So he needed guys around him. So he took it into his own hands. When Dwayne Wade was asked how would he feel if LeBron left the conference, he said, he enjoys playing against him, and he said he wouldn't mind playing with him. At the time, I thought that was like, one of those like light bulbs go off in your head, like, oh man, what is he trying to say something? And sure enough, I guess he was. And D Wade had been going through his share of struggles, because even though he had won a championship with a Shaquille O'Neal who had got there and proclaimed they were going to win a title, because that's how legit Shaquille O'Neal was before he got to Miami and what he felt about himself. And still yet, being the guy he was, took a step back and let Wade flourish as well, knowing Wade was the young buck with the young legs and could really do his thing. But also being that player that was going to draw a consistent double team, because at the time you still doubled Shaq automatically, and whoever was the number two got to play one-on-one. Dwayne Wade benefited from that, especially in the NBA Finals. So take nothing from him, one of the greatest finals performances of all time. But once Shaq left, he didn't even do as well as LeBron with the Miami Heat as far as play. When you look at playoff success and team success, the record the Miami Heat would have year in and year out in those like 2007, 8, 9, 10 years wasn't quite the same. So he needed some help too. So they decided to team together. D Wade wanted to do more, loved that feeling of winning that title. LeBron James wanted to be able to see if he could lead with other stars like his idols had done before. So he set himself up real bad by proclaiming he was going to win 7 titles, maybe more from the beginning. However, he still delivered in getting to the finals, as we've seen. His story goes, everybody knows it from there, because we can't forget it, because we get on him for even choosing to take matters into his own hands. But that's what he did. And he went and played with other guys who were all-stars. When he went to the Miami Heat that first year, let's not forget, him and Bosh went over there with Wade, and only other player they had that they were able to get based on having to pay those 3 was Mike Miller, pretty much. And they might have had Mario Chalmers and Udonis Haslam on the team, and I think they still had to figure out how to get them under contract too. But it was pretty much, okay, we got these three, and we'll see who comes play with us, because with these three, we're going to just have to make it work with them. And usually when you're trying to build a championship team, you need consistent role players, which they built over time in there in Miami, and that's how they got better. When they got even better role players, they actually won titles. But LeBron James and D Wade has some issues. It's always all put on LeBron James for not winning in 2011. But keep in mind, him and D Wade, coming over there, that was trying to figure out whose team it was going to be. LeBron James was the better player in the league at the time. Everybody knew it, but it was Dwayne Wade's team at the time, and that's, a thing in the league. So they're trying to figure that out. And they didn't figure it out fast enough for a great Dirk Nowitzki, who was balling that year. And they lost. But if you go back and look at the squads LeBron has lost to outside of the Miami Heat, where I do get on them. I'm sorry, not the Miami Heat, but the Dallas Mavericks, which I do get on him a little bit for. He could have played better, or him and D Wade should have figured that out sooner. Just some Hall of Fame great teams he lost to. And he should have maybe won a few of those, but 2015, I don't even have to go through the list of excuses with not having Love and Kyrie. And the fact that he just lost to an outright better team in 2017, and the fact that in 2018, again, had less talent. But LeBron James has shown a lot of what he can do when he has talent around him. And people hated him that first year he went to Miami for making the decision, because that was something we just hadn't seen before. And when we see somebody not struggling like we want them to struggle, misery loves company. We don't want to see that. We want to see them do it the hard way. Well, this was the hard way. It was a hard decision for him to make to go there, I'm sure. But again, Mike won in 7 years. I'm sure that was a conversation. He didn't get it done in his 7th year, so he wanted to see what he could do elsewhere. He went somewhere, still didn't win, which I'm sure was hurting him even more. And so not until his 9th year does he get his first title. And you know the rest. As far as Kevin Durant goes, he was in a tougher Western Conference. Let's remember, the Western Conference was loaded back then. And it still, is a good conference these days. Kevin Durant, his GM was a little bit better. They did an excellent job in drafting, getting Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Serge Ibaka. These were all young guys, though, when they were first getting there coming up. Even Kevin Durant, just like LeBron James, they did work early. Kevin Durant, he had his 2008, 9, 10 year. They were in the playoffs within his 3rd year in the league in a tough Western Conference, and played well against the champion Los Angeles Lakers. Kevin Durant gave Kobe a few fits guarding them that series. I never forget. But they weren't the Lakers by no stretch of the imagination. Those players had to develop more, learn more, get the mental part of the game, and they didn't put role players around them. All great teams not only have stars, which I've already talked about, but usually guys that can hit the open threes. Your John Paxsons, your Hodges, your Scotts, D. Scotts, your Robert Ory's, Bruce Bowens, all these guys. That wasn't OKC. They had raw talent, young raw talent, and guys like Thabo Sefolosha, who couldn't hit an ocean with a pebble. Let's not talk about Andre Roberson. Also, Serge Ibaka wasn't even a shooter for that matter. And James Harden at first wasn't quite a shooter. These were all ISO type guys. Harden, Westbrook, who never developed the J, and pretty much Kevin Durant. But with their heart and their will, and Kevin Durant being the main player and leading the way, they did work early. You got to remember, 3rd year, remember, Michael Jordan took him 7 years. Kevin Durant, after that, year 4 in 2011, he was in the conference finals in his 4th year. Remember, LeBron went to the championship in his 4th year. Kevin Durant's in the conference finals. Yes, he has Russell Westbrook and James Harden. LeBron James didn't have that in his 4th year, no doubt. And you might say, well, maybe he should have went to the finals, but then consider the conference. He's in the West. In the East, that team goes to the finals more than likely. outside of the Miami Heat being over there. Obviously, LeBron has help at that point in this time, if you follow in this timeline. But again, no really great role players playing against a great Dallas team that goes on to win the championship. Then they get to the finals in 2012. That's only year 5, so a year more than LeBron took, 2 years earlier than MJ getting there. And they're in the finals. They lose to the Heatles. Great team. Kevin Durant drops 30 a game on 50% shooting, balling. Russell Westbrook, if I remember correctly, had somewhere around 25 a night. He was doing his thing. James Harden was a no-show. That's okay. Let's remember, it's not completely okay, but I mean, when I say let's remember, he was a young buck. It was only the 5th year for Kevin Durant, which means it was the 3rd year for James Harden. Keep that in mind. Year 3, you're in the NBA Finals. That's a big deal. And then 2013, Russell Westbrook goes out. When Russell Westbrook goes out in the playoffs, Kevin Durant hasn't played before without his Batman, because he was kind of Superman. I don't want to say Batman and Robin because they were both legit. But he was without his Batman and his Justice League to his Superman. And so he had to learn how to play like LeBron James had already got thrown into the league, having to play from jump. And he failed that test. He didn't show up as well as he should have. And you could tell that got to him because he took that experience. And what did he do the next year while Russ missed most of the year? He had his team in playoff contention. He had them a top seed. They were like, if I remember correctly, top 4 seed when Russ got back on the scene. And he had already put together his MVP campaign, which once Russ got there, if anything, he might have hurt it a little bit because Kevin was balling so hard that year, averaging, if I remember correctly, like close to 35, 36 a game up until Russ got back. And then Russ comes back, his numbers drop down more, and he ended up ending the year, I think, around 32 a night or something like that. But he was killing and doing his thing, and he had learned how to play without Russ. He didn't get a chance to show it in the playoffs, but you could see it developing that year. And then him and Russ go to the conference finals, lose to the eventual champs, the San Antonio Spurs, a great team, nothing to sneeze at there. And then Kevin Durant gets injured. So what year is this now? Let's count these years again. Don't forget the pressure an athlete when you're on top of the game, on top of the world is facing. Guys like Kevin Durant and LeBron James, they don't want your sympathy when they hear, oh, yeah, you had a great career. You stuck it out with your team. And yes, you didn't win, but you stayed there for the long haul. That's okay. You're just not Michael, or you're just not Magic. You're Karl Malone. You're Charles Barkley, which is a little disrespectful to those two guys I just mentioned. But that's what we do. So these guys are thinking about that. And like I said, in year 5, Kevin was in the finals. Let me see, 2013 was year 6, 2014 year 7, and so 2015 he is injured that year. That would have been his 8th year in the league. So when he comes back into the league in 2016, all to his chagrin, you got the Golden State Warriors who are doing their thing, who have come out of nowhere, by the way. Keep in mind, this Golden State team wasn't in the picture. You notice I didn't mention them much when I said Kevin Durant was doing his thing in the Western Conference, battling against the Lakers and the Mavericks and the Spurs and getting to a title or Western Conference Finals for a good stretch. The Golden State Warriors were getting bounced in the first round at that point. Mark Jackson had got them to be a playoff team that you could expect to get there and be a 6, 7, or 8 seed and then leave in the first round. Then Steve Kerr comes, which pissed a lot of people off because Mark Jackson, we wanted to see him get over that hump. But Steve Kerr showed you. He got them number 1 record in the league and took them from a 6 to 8 seed to a number 1 seed and put them in the finals. And then that was a year, you got to remember, when LeBron James had already had his blueprint of how to get with stars, had Love and Kyrie, but they couldn't play in the finals. So because of that, he loses in the NBA Finals that year. And at that point, that's when Golden State won, but they weren't receiving a lot of credit. Go back and actually try to pull up some old media posts and how they were talking about Golden State, how they got lucky, how they backed into a championship because the San Antonio Spurs, who were a perennial team back then, were on a down year that year, and how Chris Paul and them that were supposed to be their rivals, that were trying to be up and coming, and they were in a race with Golden State of, they kind of were supposedly in line before Golden State. Golden State jumped over these guys and put them out the picture, but they didn't even get to play them because they choked against James Harden and them, or let's just say not even choked. They just didn't get the job done. I'll say it that way. Against James Harden and his squad in Houston at the time. And so Golden State won the finals, but people were saying they didn't necessarily deserve it that year. So they came in with a chip on their shoulders, and it reflected in how hard they played in 2016, how in sync they played. And that led them to 73-9, the best basketball they ever played of their lives. And keep in mind, that year is year 9 for Kevin Durant. So, LeBron only could take it for 7 years, and then he went looking for a change. Kevin Durant, who doesn't want to be called Karl Malone and, Barkley and Patrick Ewing, he made it 9 years. He was hurt once, so let's say, 8 years. And so he's at that same point in his career where he's trying to get it done. These upstart Golden State Warriors come onto the scene. And like I said, people were getting on them because they weren't even the favorites going into 2016. Go check it out. Look it up. It was the San Antonio Spurs and the Cleveland Cavaliers expected to win the title, even though Golden State were the champions, because people were saying how they backed into that title. And Cleveland had their stars coming back healthy, their big three. And Oklahoma City, people wanted to see how they would match up against them because Kevin Durant was hurt the whole year that they won the title, which is another knock on Golden State's title to some, that there was no Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City to do anything about it. The Spurs had a down year. Cleveland, lost their players. So all these things worked out in their favor. So here we come into 2016. The Spurs get LaMarcus Aldridge, which boosted them. Kevin Durant comes back, and Cleveland is healthy. So people weren't necessarily giving Golden State their credit. However, they showed us that they were a worthy team, being 73-9. Just wasn't able to get it done against a great Cleveland team, too, who had perennial all-stars in Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, guys that were all-stars before LeBron James got there. A guy, Kevin Love, was an all-star in the West before he played with LeBron James. Golden State was built up from the ground up. These guys became all-stars mainly due to the system Steve Kerr had put in place. Curry was a bona fide perennial all-star without the system. Clay was on his way to proving that, and you might want to say prove that at that point. But Draymond Green, come on, let's be serious. He's a utility guy, a role player. We saw that this year. That's what he is. So they kind of came out of nowhere, tried to show the world that, no, we earned our championship in 2015, and then got the aha, we didn't earn it, or at least that's the way the world looked at it to some. And the only reason it didn't get as much media press is because Kevin Durant, who was fed up with not getting it done in Oklahoma City, even though he was one of the best players in the league, wasn't like he was not wanting the ball, not playing. It had a lot to do with ball movement if you really go and look at what they were doing out there. He used to complain about it. I still remember them asking Kevin Durant, why do you guys not play more like the Spurs or the Warriors? This was in 2016. He said, we play our style. This is how we play. What he probably wanted to say is, we got this guy, Russell Westbrook, who is a dog, and he's a gift and a curse. I love having him with me because he's going to go down shooting, but sometimes that's a problem because he's going to go down shooting. And we need the point guard to pass the ball a little bit more in critical situations. I would see Kevin trying to do that for him so that he could do his thing, letting Russell take more shots so that Russell could do his thing. Now, Kevin wouldn't have got where he got without Russell. he needed Russell, but he also, to get over the hump, needed a little more out of him. But even if Russell couldn't achieve that, he needed his GM, back to that guy, to put the shooters around those two. So when they were being double teamed, they had guys to kick it to that weren't named Andre Roberson and Serge Ibaka, and guys who really can't shoot. So Steven Adams. So that was a problem. He probably did want to be with a Spurs type of squad, even though those were his rivals, or Warriors type of squad. Go back and look at the way the Warriors were recruiting the man early, already talking about going after him, like they're talking about going after Giannis right now. They were talking about Kevin Durant in December of 2015, before 2016 even struck. And they probably wouldn't have got him if he would have won, because how do you walk away winning a title if Oklahoma City beats Golden State and Cleveland, which would have been tough. Even if they had beat Golden State, do they beat Cleveland? Trust me, if Kevin Durant, after year 9, remember Mike won in 7, remember the pressure of that. If he doesn't win at that point, even if they beat Golden State, he leaves Oklahoma City. Don't get it twisted. He was out. So they had to beat Cleveland in order for him to stay, or else he was going to pull the LeBron James move and take care of this on his own. He didn't need to find other players. He had a couple other all-stars, but he needed a better organization that was going to inspire better ball movement, inspire shooters around your stars, like the Lakers and the 80s and 2000s and the Bulls and the Celtics, great teams, all had this. San Antonio had this. Golden State had this. So Kevin Durant, he gets recruited. The whole freaking state of Golden State goes to ask him in the Hamptons to come play with him. Don't want to rehash everything they did there. He decides to go. When he gets with a team that has all-stars, which isn't easy to do, to play with two guys who are getting 25 to 30 a night, and trying to find how you're going to fit on the team and score 30 or more a night too. That's tough to do, but Kevin Durant was able to blend in with their system. Everybody doesn't do that. I know that's the narrative everybody says. Anybody could have went over there and blended with the team. Everybody doesn't take a limited amount of shots to get their buckets like Kevin Durant. Everybody doesn't play off the ball and on the ball like Kevin Durant, as great as he does. And if we're going to acknowledge that Kevin Durant is as great as he is, then we got to acknowledge that everybody maybe couldn't have made the adjustment if they're not even as good as he is. And that's a tough adjustment. It's not easy. And guys have to figure out their roles. Look at the Miami team. They had to figure out their roles. Now, there was a system in place in Golden State, but Kevin had to fit into this system. And when you're bringing in a player who's better than everybody on your squad and knows it and wants you to know it, and then you're trying to adjust them into what we have already chemistry going on, that ain't easy. But they did it, dominated, shut the league down, pissed everybody off. Till this day, I think the real reason it's seen differently between LeBron and Kevin, more even outside of just that he was lost to the team and joined them, LeBron and them lost their first year. Go check out 2011. They hated LeBron as much or more than Kevin Durant. But when they lost to Dallas, the love started to come back, because he had paid his dues kind of sort of to some people. Now, some still didn't let it go, but that really lightened the mood. Kevin, that ain't what happened. He got there. If they had lost to Cleveland that year, it'd have been, see, you tried to do it this way and didn't get it done. Try to do it your own way. You need to do it our way, Kevin. But he didn't do that. He did it his way and went to the playoffs, only lost one game the entire playoffs, and that was to Cleveland. And so he had shut down the league and people hated him for it. But always remember the history when you're considering all these perspectives. Consider everything that led up to it. Don't just look at an isolated incident. The media, even in whether it's politics or sports or whatever the subject is, or diet and exercise, they show you specific pieces that they want you to see, a snapshot. And if you're looking through the keyhole, you can't see the whole room. So make sure you're paying attention and make when you're making your judgment call. And if you still feel the same way, you still feel the same way. But I just thought y'all should have a little more input and just hear me as I'm on my high horse about Kevin Durant, LeBron James, and maybe some things that went into their decisions as they decided that they were going to leave and take matters into their own hands and not be Charles Barkley and Karl Malone, who had other great players they played with, but didn't win, so they are seen in a certain light. They wanted to make sure they found a situation like their great idols, Michael, Magic, and Bird, found by luck of finding the right organization. They put it in their own hands, and then they showed they could win titles when they got the right organization around them. That's the way I see it. None of y'all agree with me. I get it. And that's cool. But hopefully you enjoyed it at least. You probably got fired up thinking, man, this dude, he don't know what he's talking about. He's biased. He just likes Kevin Durant and likes LeBron James. But hopefully you go back and do some of that research and that history, because I'm just pulling all this off my dome. I don't got no computer here, nothing like that. This is just my thoughts, as Jay-Z would say. This is just what I remember, what I recall, because I watch these games a lot and I do a lot of research. But holla at your boy. Have a good one. Happy Mother's Day.